Well, I'm substituting the beer for coffee for right now.
Oh my, been a long day, huh?
Yeah. Not really. I'm actually in a good mood. The trolls cheer me up. When they attack, I love it. It just makes me feel good. But Marshall, welcome back, and I know you've got some information you want to share, and we're looking forward to learning. So by all means.
All right. Well, there is a lot to do since the last time we talked. We've released 3 videos in our Planet X 101 series, and you can see that at yowza.com, YOWUSA.com. And we have the ones we brought up are Deep Impact, Nibiru Nearing, and Pole Shift. And just real briefly, Deep Impact, we were doing the AMS meteor data, and the trends there are not looking good. If the trends continue, we could very well have a deep impact event that would swamp a coastline. If the trends do not reverse quickly. Nibiru Nearing is the one that seems to really have hit a nerve with the elites. Excuse me. We have several observations, including several from Turrialba, that webcam we've been tracking in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And in response to our program, which went up on June 8th, the U.S. government had the camera tilted down into the dirt, so it's no longer usable. So what they've done is they've stopped the making that webcam or that surveillance camera available for viewing. And if you go to my webpage at YOWUSA.com, you can see the Planet X 101 series, all 4 programs. It's about 3 hours. And for those of you who are newbies, it distills what would be the equivalent of 3 years of personal research effort into 3 hours. So this is a really fast and friendly way to bootstrap yourself into the topic. But also when you're there, read our article, It's Time to Look Up. And in that article, I document blow by blow. But this is smoking gun proof of suppression on the topic.
Yeah, and Marshall, if you remember correctly, after the last time you were on, I had to email you to let you know that, not that I'm anybody special or important, but I, double check stuff. I took like timestamps from your video and I went and looked, and I could account for everything except for that object. And so,
yeah, that is, and then I get people saying, well, it's a reflection on this and it's a reflection on that. Well, in previous videos, we have shown the object slipping behind the cloud banks. So tell me if a reflection can do that. I don't think so.
Yeah, Peter.
So,
I'm here. Sorry, I was just listening.
Oh,
I had watched the videos earlier, and Marshall, I have to say, I've been interviewing you personally for about 3 years, and I've noticed over that period of time, at least 3 years, and over that period of time, you've continued to refine your work and provide more accurate data. And now, I'm thinking, okay, sooner or later this is going to have to show up. I was not a big fan, and I'm still not quite a big fan of Nibiru, but for different reasons now. But I wasn't, based on Zechariah Stitchin's work, I was not a big fan of Nibiru. I said, hey, we're crossing the galactic plane, and I can see Earth evidence of this. However, we watched Elenin come in and go out, and that wasn't Nibiru. And we watched Ison come in and go out, and that was supposed to be everything from the motherships in Nibiru. And no, it's not time yet. And I knew these things based on the prophecies, based on the timing that's laid out in the prophecies. However, when I'm listening to this data here that you're presenting, and I'm looking at the timeline of my data in the prophecies, I'm saying, uh-oh, heads up.
Yeah, that is, whichever way you cut it, we're in deep poodoo.
Yeah, and it's the timing of the events, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but it's the timing of the events with the blood tetrad moons that started in April on Passover. and they're going to end on the Festival of Booths, which is September 28th, 2015. Interestingly enough, the next Passover has been miscalculated. It's on the calendar as April 22nd, when indeed, when you do the calculations as prescribed, it should be March 23rd. Interesting. It may come at a time when you think not.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I don't think you'll
I'm
mistake
looking at
it.
these things and what you're saying, and I'm saying, okay, well, maybe we should pay attention to what Marshall has to say.
Yeah. I find the denial factor is just amazing to me. If you create a Google search string, end times, Bible, and deception, okay? You plug that, end times plus Bible plus deception. You put that into Google, and it comes up with like 1.63 million results. So people are used to talking about, well, yeah, there's going to be deception. 1.63 million results. I mean, stop and think about it. These are web pages that are hitting on these keywords in that sequence. And yet people still say, well, if it was that big, the government would have to tell us about it because it would be that big.
Yeah, and if you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn that's for sale. It's going cheap. It's going quick. To you, whoever wants to buy it, $300 million. You can put a toll booth on it, and we're good to go. You can make your money back in a year. I promise you. There's a lot of traffic that goes across that bridge.
And it's what I'm seeing is is just part and part of the suppression. What makes the suppression really so effective is that people really do tend to cling to the bliss of their ignorance, like jealous lovers. They do not want they don't want the news. But there's a growing minority of them that do, and that are waking up to it. And so that for me was the key issue here to creating the Planet X 101 series, which is about 3 hours of video and capped off with Pole Shift, which gets into a look at, what would the celestial mechanics be in terms of the causality of a pole shift. And, after you've watched this for 3 hours, you're going to see a lot of hard evidence. You're going to see a lot of observations. You're going to see a lot of science. You're also going to see other things. You're going to see prophecy, predictions. It pulls all of the interest angles in there. But at the end of it, if you've gone through the whole 4 episodes in the series, which takes about 3 hours, you'll have consolidated 3 years of personal research. And at that point, you're going to have a really strong mastery of the topic. And the reason why I'm doing that for the newbies is I really want them to jumpstart and to be able to get into it, because they do not have the benefit of time that people have had in the past to contemplate all of this. They really need to get rocking and rolling much faster. And so for that reason, I've got myself working on a dual track where I need to work with the newbies, which is why I do this series, but my greater emphasis right now is to begin helping people who are going to who've already committed to surviving this.
Let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry, Marshall. No, you could finish up.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you. I'd like for you to one more time go over why it's not a lens flare. And I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying for those who keep trying to, point out and say, oh, it's a lens flare. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, because lens flare, sundog, these have become knee-jerk denial rejections.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the video, really, and look at the pictures or the evidence that Marshall presents, or the videos, actually.
Right.
A picture's worth 1,000 words. Yeah.
It is. And, the thing of it that I find a little frustrating is people who say this, or people who, I say, well, have you followed my work? Have you watched my videos? Have you seen everything we presented? And, it's no. But it's a sundog. But you haven't looked at my work. No, it's a sundog. And you're not going to look at my work. No, I'm not going to waste my time looking at your work. And I mean, it's this You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But, you know, when we started looking at this, of course that's going to happen. Now, I've been in this game since 1999. That's when I wrote my first articles in this field. And it was in about 2003 that I started seeing a real heavy disinformation effort by the operatives being planted with these sundog cell phone pictures. And this was in the days when you had the early camera phones that had, you know, like 1 to 2 megapixel cameras. 2 megapixels was woo. And these cameras had really primitive circuitry compared to what we have now. And so all they had to do was just take it, name it at the sun, and shake it back and forth. And they could get it to do all kinds of stupid things and create halos and reflections and sundogs.
You know, and Marshall, I just want to say one thing here. What you're pointing out here is extremely important. At one time, I had my own photography business, and I used Hasselblad and Rolleiflex. There's a reason why I use those cameras.
Rolleiflex. Good Lord, man, you had the good stuff.
Yeah, and if I really wanted to expand the film, I had a Maya RB67, and that's I'm dealing with a piece of film which is 3 inches by almost 4 inches, and I would use ultrafine grain so I could turn around and take that picture and blow it up to a 3 by 4 photograph, 3 foot by 4 foot photograph, and it would look crisp and clear. So having and with the circuitry, when I love digital cameras. Big frustration with digital cameras. Now that they're getting up into the 40 megapixel range, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, but still,
you're dealing with circuitry and
still
the
dealing with
brain.
Circuitry and batteries. And I got to be honest with you, you know, when I've gone out on certain shoots, I still have a good old 35 millimeter Olympus, and I'll go buy film and use it because click. You know you got it. Click. And with these digital cameras, it's click. And it just takes forever for them to image. They just don't have the speed unless you're going to go out and buy these really expensive ones. But then you run out of batteries. Then you run out of chips. I mean, the old Olympus, I just get a bag of film and maybe a couple extra batteries, and I'm good to go for a trip. And so it's getting there, but the big thing that we're really finding right now people are using for observations are smartphones. And here's what really made a huge shift in the disinformation effort, because back when the cell phones were 1 to 2 megapixels, you could get all of these aberrations. And so they just started flooding the internet with this nonsense. All right. And we were watching it. We've documented it. You can find it on our site. You know, we were, documenting what was happening years ago. Not that anyone is ever interested in history. And however, things changed in a very pronounced way when Apple brought out the first of the iPhones. I think back then it was about, 8 megapixel was the camera, but it just simply, the iPhone set a whole new standard. And at that point, what we saw was that the disinformationalists stopped the campaign. But they had already achieved their goals. They had gotten the terms reflections and sundogs injected into the public domain. And consequently, when people would look at pictures coming off of smartphones, they would brand them as sundogs just as fast as they would coming off of these junky little phones, which we won't even use images that come in from those phones. They're just very problematic. But the smartphones, now you're talking 10, 12 megapixels and more. I've got a Galaxy S4 Active, and my God, the picture resolution is amazing. And so once those came in, the disinformation campaign chilled out, but the damage was already done. And so people were already inoculated against these kind of images. And the thing is, with a smartphone, you can get reflections and sundogs in an image, but you can also, unlike with the cheap cameras or the older cameras, which were very poor, you can differentiate between a legitimate object and some sort of aberration, reflection, or sundog. And so you can make those distinctions in a better resolution camera. And so you still have this thing where people jump to it. Now, when we started tracking Turrialba, all right, and this is 3 different camera systems, and one was a standard definition, one was high definition, and the current one, which was gifted by the United States government, is about as clear as mud. And however, we've acquired Nibiru with all 3. But what's more important is
that you're
right,
talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
But the point here is, and we've already put it in one of our past videos, all right, is that we have images of Nibiru slipping behind a cloud bank. Now, Peter, you were a professional photographer. How does a reflection or sundog or lens aberration slip behind a cloud bank?
It doesn't. When the sun, whenever that bright object goes behind the sun clouds, that flare should go away. As a matter of fact, my favorite day to shoot, especially outdoors, was on overcast days. No sun, no haze. You didn't have to worry about any kind of lens flare being in the way. And with a little touch of light, hey, you had your own sun.
Yeah, but the point is that if you have a lens flare, all right, the lens flare is just going to stay there. It's an aberration. It'll appear in front of a cloud as all right. But if it's a natural object, it will. In other words, if it's a lens flare, it's between you and whatever you're imaging.
Correct.
If it's a natural object, all right, then it's a natural object, and then it can be obscured.
Oh, sure. And so, when it goes behind the cloud, that's pretty much it. You're not going to see. It should go completely away. Depending on what's causing that lens flare.
It goes away because it is obscured. But if it is a lens flare is an aberration that happens in front of what you're shooting. It's between you and the target. Exactly. That's where lens flares occur, is between you and between what you're shooting.
And they should be off to the side, typically.
Well, the lens flare is just going to stay there until you shift the camera view, you do something different, you do something dramatic. All right? So the point here is we went through and we did a lot of work. I mean, God, we spent weeks on this stuff, reviewing the images, because we knew there would be this knee-jerk nonsense coming out. But also as researchers, we didn't want to go down a rabbit hole. So we want to make sure, first off, is this a reflection, a lens aberration, a flare of some sort? No. Okay, when we did our deep analysis on it, no. Were there flares, were there sun flares and other aberrations occurring? Yes. But because we had high-resolution imagery, you can sort between the two. Then we knew we had a natural object. Now, one of the things that we do is called a gamma test. That is the easiest way. Gamma is a way of adjusting your images in a digital format. It's not for film. Gamma is digital. It's desktop publishing. And so if you have a reflection, reflections are what we call cold objects. All right, so you turn the gamma down to 0, you'll always see the sun. But your reflections or your sundogs will disappear because they're cold images. They're not generating their own light. These are reflections of light that is already existing in the environment. So because the light has been bent through the distortion, it's not going to have the same heat, if you will. It's not going to be hot. It's going to be cold. And that is the principal way we use gamma for the test. And so when we look at it, you pull the gamma down to 0, and if that object is still there, then you know that that object is generating light, because the only thing that'll go to 0 gamma is something that's generating light. All right, we do that, but also we go and we look at feathering. All right, if you have reflections and you do an intense close-up, you go down to the pixel level. Now, this is the reason why you need to have the high resolution. Because with high resolution, you can really zoom in on this, especially when if you have original source files.
This gives you one big advantage with the digital camera that you're not going to have with the film camera. Because you'd have to be looking at the raw negatives under a loupe to actually look at what grains of silver were exposed.
Yeah, that's really it. And the thing about it with digital is when you get the raw image file, you're essentially doing the same thing. you can really go down. And that's when we're looking for, the other thing besides gamma is we're looking for edge definition. All right, and an object that's generating its own light is going to have a crisper edge when you really zoom down on it. And a reflection is not. Reflection is always going to have a soft edge. So are sundogs.
And guys,
so these are the kind of things that we do when we're evaluating these images. And you know, I'm just not going to be buffaloed by a bunch of disinformation operatives who have just gone out and tainted, you know, the discussion with, you know, they do that. Like now the current thing is, you know, before sundog, you know, and everybody says it because they think, oh, well, it makes me sound intelligent. Okay, good. All right. And they really don't understand, you know, to the level that we do. Now the new term after sundogs that the disinformationalists have created is fear porn. Okay. And so these are code words. These become code words. It's this is social programming. And when you hear these code words, the immediate emotional message people get is, don't look at this. Don't look at this. Don't look at this. All right? And that's how it works. And it's effective because people want it to be effective.
We've got to take a break, guys. So we'll pick right back up on this. I do want to ask you this quick before the break. Didn't the clouds, I mean, they played a significant role in showing that it wasn't a lens flare too, did they not? If I remember correctly?
If the object disappears behind the cloud, all right, then you know that that object is behind the cloud. And a lens flare is going to be between you and the cloud. Mm-hmm. Lens flares live directly right in front of the camera, all right? Real natural objects are wherever they are in front of the camera. And that means if that object is slipping behind a cloud bank, that means that object is in space and it is behind the cloud. And that's the reason why it slips behind the cloud bank.
Yeah, your lens flare could actually, is most likely right within the lens itself.
Yeah, a lot of these are, you know, this is going to be within the lens. If you have a surveillance camera, it has a housing. The housing will have a glass that's protecting the lens, so you can get an interaction between the lens and the camera and the surveillance housing, you know, protective filter that's in front of it. But, you know, in the final analysis, whether it's sundogs, reflections, or whatever, it's all going to take place within an inch or two of the imaging circuitry. All right. Whatever's existing in the environment is whatever's going to be in the environment. And in the case of Turrialba, we're looking at infinity as the setting. So, you know, we're shooting the other side of a volcano. Behind that is going to be cloud banks. Behind the cloud banks is going to be the sun and whatever objects are visible. And then, of course, once we've determined that it's a natural object, the next thing we have to do is it a cataloged object? You know, and this is the other thing. I mean, we always hear that they go Venus, 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 Venus.
And I was able to account.
Hey, you know what? Right there in what we're showing you, you have the direction, you have the time of day, you have the location. Go get Stellarium and check for yourself. Do they ever do it? No. Because they like sounding intelligent by going Venus, 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 Venus. If they would look, they would say, it's not a cataloged object.
All right.
You already did that, right?
Michael did, yes. Marshall, when we come back from the break, I want to ask you about Antarctica.
All right. Okay. Peter, take us into the break while you're there.
Folks, stay with us. After the break, we'll be going to Antarctica.
We'll be back, everyone. It'll be a bad luck day, but I'll tell you, why do I always feel so good on Friday the 13th? That might be bad.
It's a full moon besides.
Oh.
This isn't going to happen for like another 80 years or something like that. I forgot exactly what it was. But, you know, I get a kick out of it. I always like Friday the 13th. It's like, okay, you know, let's stare destiny in the face. And especially on a full moon. But you know where Friday the 13th got its unlucky aura from?
I don't know.
It was
Knights Templars.
Yes, it was Friday the 13th that they started rounding up Knights Templar and officially ended the order. Or at least those who were running the order anyway.
See, and Friday the 13th has never been a bad luck day for me. I've never had a Friday the 13th that I could look back on and say, oh my God, I'm not getting out of bed today. They've always been pretty good, so I don't know.
I agree with you. It's like, hey, today's Friday the 13th. Cool. Let's go live life.
Yeah. Good night to drink and watch some scary movies, right?
Speaking of which, Marshall, I've been watching Antarctica for at least 2 or 3 years. It's right on my main feed here. It's the second New Meyer station that I've been watching. Their essential live, semi-live snapshot feed of the station and the horizon. And I've watched the sun rise lots of times, and I've watched the moon rise lots of times, and I've seen some things I can't explain. Now, some can be explained by, quote, lens flares. As a matter of fact, the first time I looked at something, I go, wait a minute, what in the world is going on here? What am I actually seeing? But I've seen some things which can't be explained by lens flares, and there's one that's going on now. But here's the interesting thing. You brought up the volcano, where they swapped out the camera, and the image turned to garbage. Well, the camera that they had at New Meyer Station was a pretty good camera. It showed everything. The Aurora Borealis, or I guess it's down there. It's what is it, Aurora Antiala, or whatever the heck it is. That it's called something differently down there. The Southern Lights, the equal thereof. Beautiful. You'd see it right in color some nights. The sky would just light up green and different shades, and you can watch the shimmer as you watch the still photo. Changed out the camera. Now it looks like you have an old black and white TV that you turn around and you're in between channels, or you're on a channel that's not transmitting, and you got nothing but snow coming across. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that they actually put in a little sub-screen camera next to it, so you could still see that the station was there without the snow. Now, they have improved the resolution of it a little bit, but boy, not like it used to be. Now, the interesting thing is that I've been watching something rise almost every morning for at least a year that I've been writing off as Venus. I'm not an astronomer. I'm not going to go run down and educate myself in something that I barely know to go find information that doesn't really affect my life today, something that I already know is coming, and I've got a man that is dedicated to understanding it, and his information is right at my fingertips. So, seeing as you're here,
Yeah.
do you keep track of what's going on? How closely do you follow what's going on in Antarctica?
I'm always getting stuff, coming across the transom on that, and oftentimes we find it is a cataloged object, and so you don't get anything in terms of the resolution being changed. I mean, that's obvious. Instead of going in and mucking with the camera feeds, because things do sometimes fall through the cracks, it's just easier, to replace high definition cameras with clear as mud cameras. I mean, I think literally they had to go and get some of the original cameras that were used to film the Kennedy-Nixon debate.
Yeah, it almost seems that way. It's like
they just look awful. That's what they did, with Turrialba. The first two systems were put up by the university that operates it there in Costa Rica. And when the second system, which was a very nice high-definition system, when it was disabled during a volcanic eruption, and these things happen. It's a very active volcano. It's a very dangerous environment up there, and it's hard on the cameras. And the thing about Turrialba that's very different from other volcano cams and surveillance cameras or webcams is that 99% of the other volcano cams are all pointed out to the east, because that's either they're pointed directly to the east or they're pointed right down into the mouth of the volcano. To the east, they want those really fabulous, sunrise pictures in the morning, which are really fun to look at. With Turrialba, what they could only work from the eastern flank of the volcano. It was the only safe place where they could mount a camera looking out to the west-southwest. And the purpose of the volcano camera for Turrialba is actually, it's principally for the benefit of the people who live at the base of the volcano, because they get up in the morning and, they're not tuning into, Good Morning America. They're tuning into the volcano feed to see if they're going to need to bust a move that day. And So it's always had a very good field of view to show people what's happening in the volcano, particularly with a couple of the vents there. And the second camera, which was high definition, which was installed, I think, in late 2012, and that was the one that we did all our imaging on in 2013. We've got literally, we probably got over 1,000 captures of Nibiru from that camera system. And it was toasted, I believe it was in May of 2013. And then the feed went dark, came back, I believe, in July, and with a camera that was gifted to them by the United States government. And it was just the worst camera. It reminded me of those old 2-megapixel cell phone cameras. It just was that bad. It had a very wide focus, and it was installed with a peculiar tilt and a zoom. It was very difficult to use, and actually through the remainder of 2013 we would monitor it. We have team members who monitor it, and we just couldn't find anything useful. However, in January of this year, Nibiru is nearing, it is getting bigger, and so even with this highly distorted camera, we were able to acquire it and to observe it. And so that is what we reported in our video we published on June 8th, which is Nibiru nearing. And in that one, we actually do a detailed analysis, and I actually, in that video, go through January of 2010, and Nibiru was visible in 2010. Also, we have January of 2013, January of 2014. It gives us the same time of year for 3 different years and 3 completely different camera systems. And then what I do is I compensate for tilt and zoom, but also not only people are resonating with it. What happened was the United States government had a very nasty response to it. And what they did was they went to the operators of the feed in Costa Rica, and they had them do 2 things. One, post on the site a very detailed acknowledgement of who had gifted the camera, and then they had the camera pointed down and basically into the dirt. And so the lower 2/3 of the image is completely useless. It's the ground at the base of the camera, which there's nothing of value there to look at or to study. But what it does do is it denies you a view of the sky. And so their response to our video of June 8th was to make the feed completely unusable by perverting the image from the camera, which is completely inconsistent with anything that that university has been doing since 2010. All right? So this is something where it's very clearly a cover-up. We document and explain it. I published an article this morning. It's time to look up. And it really is. And you know, I get from people after we go through the cell phone sundog issues and all of that and all the, you know, all the usual yada yada from the disinformation programming, people say, well, okay, so why? Why should I care? Why should I care? And the reason why they should care and the reason why there's suppression is that you have to understand what the global elites, what their strategy is. You know, the people that throw all of these nonsense objections at me are not the wealthy people.
And I'd like to
the
just...
top 2% of the world, they got their bunkers. I'm telling you, you would have maybe only 1 out of 100 doesn't have a bunker. Or hasn't made arrangements to go into a taxpayer-funded bunker.
Go ahead, Michael, and then I want to make a comment.
Okay, I just wanted to say quickly where my interest came in this whole Planet X ordeal is back, and I just want to go through this quickly. Back in 1983, I went to John Marshall High School in Rochester, New York, and my science teacher was Mr. Freeman. So anybody wants to look that up and see if I'm telling the truth, you can look it up. And in that class, we would get once a week, they would give us a little like magazine type, real thin, few-page pamphlet from NASA, and it was part of our science. We were supposed to pick a story out of there we were interested in, do some research on it, and write about it. Well, I came across Planet X, and NASA said they found it, and this was in this magazine. I remember going home, I was excited because in it they said there could be life and blah blah. You know, they said a few things about it, And and I didn't think nothing of it. Years went by, I didn't hear no more about it. Then I started listening to Art Bell back in the 1990, and I heard it mentioned a few times, and it clicked in, and I remembered, and I says, hey, I remember reading about that. And since then, I have been looking into it, and I've come across a lot of stuff that points towards it. I've seen a lot of bull crap that's come out about it. I have to say, Marshall, you are the only one, and I am a hard person to convince. Anybody that listens to this show knows this. I'm hard about these things. But Marshall, you are the only one that has provided me with something that I could actually verify that is out there. Now, I could say I don't know exactly what it is. I wait for your data to find out if this thing's moved or where it is and blah, blah, blah. But it's there. It's, if in my opinion, and I'm no professional, but I did what anybody could do. I took the coordinates. I looked on a star map. I found this object, and it wasn't Venus, it wasn't Saturn, it wasn't Jupiter, it wasn't any of those, it wasn't any of the moons, and it wasn't a lens flare. It's there. I don't know what it is. You do, but it's there. And so you have verified more to me than anybody ever has on this topic. And I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. I'm just saying. So that's where I'm coming from on this, so people understand. And Peter just lost his internet connection. Or did I? No, Peter did. And when he went down, he took everybody down. All right, so let me hang up here. Okay, hold on, folks. We got nailed here. All right, let me first get Marshall back on.
This is the general mailbox for your own world.
Well, that ain't gonna work. All right, let me first get Peter back on. Well, I don't know if his connection's come back yet. Peter was controlling the call, and he lost his connection. So when that happened, we lost everything. So we'll see if Peter gets back so he could comment. Let me try Marshall again. I'm just going to go back and forth here until I get one of them.
This is the general mailbox for
That's
your own.
Not going to work. Wow, you sure it's not me that went down here? No, I'm still up. How about a little something in the chat there? Can everybody hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Anybody hearing me? LateNightInTheMidlands.com chat room. Can somebody give me a shout? Thank you, JH. All right, so I'm good. So this is Peter then. All right, so let me get him. Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay. Well, looks like we peed off.
Peter, you gotta hang up. You gotta hang up on Curtis, though, Peter. You brought us all back.
Well, Curtis, if you're with us, hang up yourself. Oh, wait, I might be able to do it for me.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Oh no! Now you're calling him back. Oh boy.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, we have thunderstorms here, and we just had I thought I was going to be down for the rest of the night, but it was the power went off and came back on. No, it was not the elite attacking us, although I do want to get into that subject.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm glad to hear it was thunder.
Well, I said what I had to say, Peter, so go ahead. I know you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, help, I've been knocked off the air. Oh, shucks. Where was it? Go talk about having to reflect. Tell you what, why don't you folks carry on? I'll catch up.
Well, I was just talking about my interest, where my interest came in this subject, and that how Marshall Masters, and I've been critical. Believe me, I've had a guy, and Marshall, you know him probably pretty well by now, King, Don, who's in my chat, and him and I would argue back and forth, and I'd say, yes, Marshall has some good information, but it hasn't been proven to me yet. And then finally, I saw that video, and I could honestly say you found something. It's
let me say this. I forgot my original thought in the scurry to get back online, but that's okay. I will say this. I've listened to virtually everyone that is out there at one point or another. People will say, have you listened to this person? And I'm like, oh, geez, I listened to that person. They go back and look at the video. Yep, I've listened to what they've had to say. I've listened to what all of the I'll call them David Icke wannabes or whatever they are. I've listened to what they've all had to say, and none of them have an answer other than, oh, well, we're going to reach a higher dimension, and we're going to ascend, and we're going to experience a new life someplace else. Hey, that's called rapture, folks, which is not substantiated by the scriptures, by the way. The idea of the rapture came out of a large evangelical movement that happened back in the early 1800s. You'd be surprised how many religions are still around, which was started back in the 1800s. They just grew into something else. But that's where this whole idea of the rapture began. Before that, there was never any mention of a, quote, rapture. I'm not going to get into church to dogma, but that's not why we're here. The interesting thing is, though, when you do look at the scriptures and how it's laid out, I use it personally as a timeline. I have a long education in it. I've studied it all my life. I go back and reanalyze it. And I've listened to all of these people. And I've listened to the scientific end as best you can. I gathered a lot of information from Richard Hoagland, right up to his $33 attendance for his Comet Ellen seminar. And I didn't pay the $33. It was eventually put out on YouTube, and I watched it for free. But I just thought, boy, isn't that an interesting number? Isn't that telling? And eventually I stopped paying attention because what Richard was saying, now I did learn some things, but it wasn't what he was, when he would say something, it was like very esoteric, non-definitive. It was out there in the ether someplace, and you had to wait for more information. Stay tuned for drip, drip, drip. And so, it's like, come on, give me a break. And then the trolls, whenever I would make a comment on his Facebook page, the trolls would come out. Oh, exactly, that's fear porn. No, it's not. It's a warning. I don't know how many times I've used this expression. If your house was on fire and your neighbor tried to wake you up, would you tell him, go away, it's fear porn, you're a fearmonger?
Well, and I don't try to convince anybody of anything. All I'm doing is I'm trying to get truth. Once I confirm something and it's real to me, I'll then share it with others. And if they want to, follow along and look into it, great. But a lot of times, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of times I find this on YouTube all the time. You got people trying to debunk that have never even, I call them the parrot society. They repeat everything they hear. They don't want to do any research of their own. And I run into that quite often with people. And so,
and the more closed mind they are, the less likely they are to read anything other than the headline, make a comment based on ignorance. I got into a heated debate over a topic with that in a friend's restaurant one night. Got up and walked off. This gentleman pulled. I love this. He pulled his heritage. He said, "My great grandfather was a major in the Confederate War and in the Confederate Army." And I'm thinking, so your family comes from a bunch of bigots, huh?
That was good. He must have stuck you with a check after that one.
Well, we weren't dining together. We just happened to be in proximity thereof as the conversation was going on. But I got so upset over the situation, I walked out without paying the bill.
Good, you stuck him. Great.
Well, it was my friend's restaurant. I stuck my friend. I would have paid the bill later on, but I was so pissed at this person's ignorance. The fact that he would make a comment based on no information whatsoever to base the comment upon.
None. Yeah. It's like, you go, they say, okay, I want to debate you on your evidence. Okay, fine. Have you studied it? No, but I want to debate you on your evidence.
And what you get,
and it's like, have you looked at any of my videos? No, but I want to debate you on your evidence. It's like, so what are you going to do? Just call me names? How this is going to help? But, guys, this behavior it has nothing to do with Planet X, and it has everything to do with social programming. Social programming is very powerful. Let me explain to you how this works, because this is important to understand why these people just do these idiotic things. Is that, first off, we are talking about a topic that provokes a deep racial memory that is in our memory engrams from birth, of rocks falling out of the sky and killing a heck of a lot of people. And so it is a terrifying thought for us. It just immediately evokes terror. And awareness, when you come into awareness in this topic, like I often say, it's like getting hit in the face with a dead salmon. You're just spitting scales for a while and wondering what the hell happened to you. And so what happens after your racial memory of a space threat is provoked you're having an incredibly powerful, fearful, emotional response, which is then immediately channeled through social programming. You know, social programming comes, if we were in North Korea, you know, well, yes, everyone's in lockstep for the great leader. Okay, we know who's doing the social programming. Here, it's every bit just as powerful, but it's more subtle. And the social programming has a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid are the central bankers. And then they're the ones telling the corporations what the message is. Then the corporations are telling the governments that are in service to the corporations what the message is. And then it finally filters down to the people we rely on for advice, our doctors and our ministers and our parents and so forth. And finally, there we are at the, you know, the bottom end of the triangle. And
might I add, this is also somewhat of a game of telephone. So the message at the top either becomes amplified or distorted by the time it hits the bottom. But what it all comes down to is that we're controlled, and we're never ever told the truth.
We're never told the truth. And here's the thing of it is, you can ask everyone, does social programming exist? And everyone will look you straight in the face and say, absolutely, social programming, there's no question about it, it exists. And then right after they say that, they're going to look at you and they're going to say the same thing that every alcoholic who is in denial will tell you. But I can control it. All right? And alcoholics will say, I can control it, and I can control it, and they'll do that until finally they've destroyed their life, and gosh knows how many other lives, and they show up one night at an AA meeting, and they stand up and they go, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. But they've got to really wreck their lives in order to get to that point. And with social programming, it's the same thing. Everyone it's a given. There's no hidden fact about it. But what people don't understand is that they embrace it like alcoholics embrace the bottle.
All right. Let's take a look at this. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be a number of things.
Anything. And it really boils down to people just cling to the bliss of their ignorance like jealous lovers. Now, the
who's
folks
dancing
that
with the
don't do
stars?
that, huh?
Who's dancing with the stars?
Yeah, who's that? You know, it's like, you know, what's Beyonce doing today? And that's the reason why that's all you see on CNN.
Who's on
So
first?
people, they want the distraction. They don't want to deal with the long-term threats. Now, people who have money, the top 2%, if someone's in the top 2% and they don't already have a bunker, and I'm talking about $500,000 is like entry level for these folks. If they don't have one of these things, and typically they're multi-million-dollar bunkers, they are a real oddball in their social cast. These people do not sit here and go with the cell phone sundog, all these fear porn, all of these disinformation mantras, and attacking anybody that's trying to present information. They are like sponges. They soak it up because they understand risk. They understand you take risk, you mitigate it, you evaluate it, you protect against it. But in the final analysis, you're always looking down the road to see, okay, what could adversely affect my position? And you plan for dealing with that, which is no different than every military in the world does war games for every possible contingency, including alien invasions. All right? People who work with risk are the ones that look at this. I call them the perceptives. They look at it rationally, and they move forward in a very rational manner, and they do some very impressive stuff. The people who do not work in risk, the ones that want a paycheck because they don't want uncertainty in their lives, these are the ones that are going, oh boy, rocks falling from space, I'm going to channel this through my social programming. Obviously, if you're talking about something that is not about being a good consumer, then you're one of those, all right? And you get mocked and humiliated. And it's really easy to tell when people are in this knee-jerk social programming response mode because they're completely irrational. And I see this with folks that are coming into awareness and have had dreams, visions, and premonitions. And unfortunately, only 1 in 5 couples are you going to see where both husband and wife are in awareness together. And when they do, these are incredibly happy people. Just incredibly happy people, and they're busy researching and preparing and planning, and they've got control over their lives. And they are, what's really important is once you are in awareness, you are really free of the social programming. You are marching to the beat of a different drummer, all right? and you're being punished for it. You know, you're off everyone's Christmas card lists and so forth. But you're walking humbly with your God, and it opens up your life to a whole new dimension. That's amazing. You go through what the mystics call a Kundalini ascension, and you become really spiritual. You get much more connected to the cosmic consciousness, God, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it. But your sense of connection, your sense of purpose, and how the universe is unfolding really expands in ways that are nurturing and fulfilling. And for the people who are the fear babies that are still stuck in their social programming with these knee-jerk reactions, they can't relate to it. And what I see with these couples is that one in awareness will tell the other, honey, just please look at this mountain of evidence I've accumulated. And the spouse, who's a spoiler spouse, is going to go, no, it's all stupid. I don't want to look at it. Never going to happen. But just look at a few things. No, it's all stupid. You're stupid. And if you don't do it, I'm going to divorce you. And see what happens. That's it. It gets into these really, really nasty threats, bad behaviors, name calling, mockery, humiliation. And you know, the interesting thing is, I have never seen someone in awareness who is married to a spoiler spouse. Never do I see them say, well, you're as dumb as a sack of hammers, I'm going to divorce you. Never. They're always as loving as possible. They always bend backwards. They always turn the other cheek. It's the other spouse that immediately goes on the warpath with, if you don't stop this awareness crud, I'm going to divorce you. Okay?
And the hammer. You'll burn in hell.
You'll burn in hell. And the interesting thing is about once that thread is laid down, the spoiler spouse, then they've hit the nuclear button. Okay? Now it's a winner-take-all kind of situation. And in 1 out of 10 cases, I see that the spoiler spouse will divorce the person in awareness. But in the final analysis, 9 times out of 10, it's the person in awareness that winds up divorcing the spoiler spouse, if for no other reason than you're just tired of dealing with all the negativity they're injecting into your life, and you just want some peace and quiet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember this one woman who has been studying the topic for 20 years. And she finally, her husband just got totally freaked out when she said, we need to move away. I'm watching shifting weather patterns. We need to move away from where we're at. We need to go. We need to relocate to a different area. And he said, that's it. I've had it with you and this nonsense. And he went out and divorced her. And he got an attorney and just ripped her to pieces. He took the house. She got brutalized in a divorce, and she didn't, that was fine, okay. And she wanted to relocate, and she did. A year after the divorce, and she relocated. The house where her husband had taken from her was completely washed away in a flood. I mean, the whole house, right off the foundation.
Peter, your stomach's growing.
And this guy has just lost absolutely everything because his allegedly crazy awareness wife was telling him it would happen, and it happened just as she said it would happen. And what did he kept saying after that? No, you're still crazy. Yeah, I'm sane because I stayed in a house that got flooded off the foundation.
And Marshall, I'm listening to you talk about this, and some people will just never ever understand it. I think of the most. I'm going to call this totally pig-headed, and you'll love the explanation. So this was 15 years ago. I got into a conversation with my boss about. And I made the comment that pigs classified as pachyderms. And he said, oh, no, pigs aren't pachyderms. And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure they classify as pachyderms. Nah. Well, anyway, I turned around and I searched around the office. I found a dictionary, looked up pachyderm. And it gave different explanations, including elephants, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, and pigs. My one sister is at about 60 feet, and the other one is, I'm not sure exactly, but somewhere around 150 feet. She's just a little bit further inland. And it's funny, I used to talk to them all the time. And so I told them, get the hell off the coast. Nope. Sell your property, get off the coast, move inland. I'm the only one that lives over 1,000 feet. Hey. I got a 1,000-foot moat between me and the ocean.
And after Peter, I'll send you the mailing address for FOA.
I
Future Orphans of America.
Seriously, I literally gave my brother my boat and said, "Here, do not keep it strapped down to the trailer, and make sure the tank is full."
Hey, listen, we've got to take a break, fellas. When we come back, I would actually like to do that. Let's talk a little bit of where it is, when we can expect arrival, and let's talk about some areas and where might be safe and where might not be safe. So,
Okay.
all right, guys. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera with Peter Kling, our guest Marshall Masters, and we've got him linked up on the homepage. And say hello to our radio affiliates over there on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Hello to all of you who come over and listen to us here on Late Night in the Midlands. And, of course, High Point Radio, the top of New Jersey, 1700 AM and 100.5 FM. That's covering New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and certainly everybody listening via internet. Welcome, and that is around the world, of course. My guest tonight, Marshall Masters. I got Peter Kling, who's co-hosting. So you can kind of call this Late Night in the Midlands / World Watchers, if you will. And, we were talking about trolls, and we're going to get off this subject here quick. But what's funny, I had a guy who used to pop in the chat by the name of Helmet. And I knew who Helmet was all along. And, once you bust these guys, what they do is they come back with new emails and new names. And it just goes on. And next week, Dr. Nuccitelli and I will be discussing that very thing. But, Marshall, we are back. Peter, we're back. And, Marshall, I thought maybe in this last hour we could talk about where it is, when we expect its arrival, and what people should be doing, whether they believe that this is coming or not. It's not a bad idea to prepare, but go ahead.
Hold on just a second before we turn Marshall loose.
Uh-oh.
Whoa, big fella. Something I do want to say, and here I always give credit where credit is due, and I want to say kudos to Marshall on his work. Just about a year ago, it'll be a year ago in the beginning of July, that I did an interview with Alfred Weber on the 2013 to 2017 timeline. And in that timeline, I laid out the Tetrad moons, which we have entered as of this year, and as I said earlier, and the different events that we could expect to happen under the Tetrad moon cycle as it comes around. Now, the fact that they are Tetrad moons is unusual enough. In other words, there are 4 full lunar eclipses in a row without any partial lunar eclipses at all. Interestingly enough, during the same time period, there are 4 solar eclipses, 2 full, 2 partial. The full solar eclipse, the next full solar eclipse happens on Nisan 1, 2015, 2 weeks before the blood moon of Passover. So you've got these. Now, what's even more bizarre is that this started off on a synchronization with the Gregorian calendar of essentially the same date, April 14th, Nisan 14th. It never happened before. The blood moons are unusual enough, but now they're all on Hebrew holidays, the 2 most high holidays of the Hebrew calendar year, for 2 years in a row. Extremely unusual. They end on the day before the most accepted historic date for Jesus' birth. They end on on September 28th. The most historic accepted date for Jesus' birth is September 29th. The following Passover is misdated. It's coming a month late. However, I'm going to go back to this video that we did, and you can make reference to it because it's not about the timeline. It's specifically about this event. Here's the situation. The timeline falls out almost perfectly for what Revelation 6:12 through 17 could only be described as the Nibiru event. And that's what makes this so peculiar, in not a strange way, but in a timing of events. I don't believe in coincidence. Coincidences are 2 things happening at the same time. But let's look for historic precedent. And when we do, the last historic precedent was at the time of Egypt's the liberation of the tribe of Israel from Egyptian control back during the Exodus. But interesting, when you read the wording that is used in Revelation, the 6th chapter, in the 12th verse, it's interesting how it starts off. And then, Marshall, after I read this, I'm going to leave this to you. Okay. It says that I watched as the Lamb broke the 6th seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became as dark as black cloth, and the moon became as red as blood. The stars of the sky fell to the earth like green figs falling from trees shaken by mighty winds. and the sky was rolled up like a scroll and taken away, and all of the mountains and all of the islands disappeared. And the kings of the earth, the rulers, the generals, the wealthy people, the people with great power, and every slave and every free person all hid themselves in the caves and among the rock masses of the mountains. And they cried out to the mountains and to the rocks, fall over us and hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to survive? Now, when you go back to the first Gulf War, Norman Schwarzkopf carried out what was called shock and awe. He took out his enemy's eyes, he took out his enemy's ears and speech, and then he took out his enemy, and that war was measured in hours, not weeks, months, or years. Of course, it led to a war that's never ending there since. But you see, once this Nibiru event or Planet X event happens, we can pretty much kiss all communications goodbye. And the event itself is timed according to the prophecies. And so I cannot ignore your message, Marshall. I cannot ignore it.
I can't either, because it's hard data, and I love that stuff. It's like
it's synchronicity. Is it coincidence? It's one hell of a coincidence, yeah. Because it's this event which takes out the eyes and ears of the military and all their advanced weapons and all their goodies that they intend on using against the people and whoever might be showing up, and it puts everything in the hands of a higher power. Think about that. An off-planet higher power. Call it what you want, but we are going to be impressed with what happens by the time it's all over. At least those of us who survive it.
Well, that's my bag is, I want people to survive it. What I see, and I talk about this in this article, it's time to look up on my site. I posted it this morning on yowza.com, YOWUSA.com, and I really give people the big bada bing of what's really important, why they should be looking. And because in my video, I have a guy from North Carolina, Richard Bowler, who made 2 observations of Nibiru, and the chemtrail spraying was really hard, and so he got to see it in between chemtrail spraying from 2 different locations in the same city on 2 different dates. And the interesting thing was we correlated those 2 being in the same area of the sky as we were observing Nibiru from Turrialba, and we also show that in the video. But the point I'm trying to get across to people is that when I look at what the elites are doing, I see a completely different scenario than what I see with the common man. The common man is just all over the map, and they're in denial, and they don't want to. And interestingly enough, the Bible tells us exactly that's what's going to happen. People are going to be deceived because they want to be deceived. It's going to be the rare few that are not. So it's a pandemic of denial. But for the elites, they've got a long-term strategy. And what they're seeing is, right now in the present-day world, the elites who control this world, if it were a poker game, they're holding a royal flush. You're not going to beat their hand. So carping and complaining about it and all the injustices and so forth, why bother? They're going to win, and they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Marshall, if I might just interject here for a second. When just about the same time as I was done writing Letters to Earth, I think I was in the process of having the editing done. I made friends with an heiress to the Maersk shipping line.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when they were having those really bad forest fires in Greece. She was on her yacht out in the Mediterranean, and we were communicating via who knows how. She was hooked up to the internet, and I was like, when she told me her name, I said, I've seen your family, I've seen your name before. She said, yeah, we move things. I'm like, okay, whatever. But she had said this, and I said, well, we got on the subject of Armageddon. And she says, oh, yes, we know well of Armageddon. Not worried about it at all. She says, I've got a place to go where I can stay for 18 months and live totally happily without any problem whatsoever, with no inconvenience. This is a woman who's heiress to one of the largest shipping lines on the face of the earth. They're commercial movers. You see their trucks or their containers going up and down the highways of the world, literally.
Right.
At least I have. And she's, yep. But this is what, 7, 8 years ago I published, 7 years ago this was. And yep, we know all about Armageddon. We are all ready for it. I live very comfortably for 18 months.
You know what? she will live comfortably for 18 months, and then it's not going to be so good, because what we're looking at now, looking at the way these objects are moving through the sky, we're talking about a catastrophe that's going to last a decade. All right. So all of these bunker bunnies, we call them bunker bunnies because they all are. They've got these luxury underground condominiums. They're going to sit down there for 2 years eating MREs and watching The Sound of Music. When they come up, they're not going to know what life has become on the surface, and they are going to be real easy targets. They are going to stand out like sore thumbs for renegades, rogues, marauders, and the worst of it is that there will be cannibalism, and the cannibals are going to go for the bunker bunnies because they're going to be sweet meat. They're not going to be living on tree bark and worms. They're going to be eating well. They're going to be easy to spot. They'll smell them at a distance because their body chemistries are going to be so much different than everyone on the surface. So the bunker bunnies are not going to fare as well as they think. They've bought themselves into a short-term delusion. The people that are really going to survive are the ones that are going to be on the surface. And here's where the elites are concerned, because the big elites, the ones that are running the world, these are the guys that their bunker systems are designed for a decade or more. They're self-sustaining. They can go the long haul. When they do come back up to the surface, what they're going to want to do is re-exert their dominion over the planet. Now, what they're going to do is you can go research like the Svalbard Seed Vault. Well, Bill Gates, the most successful monopolist in the world, is the poster child for it, and it's underwritten by Monsanto. You know, these people are, not known for compassion and love. They're globalists, and, they want to devour the world. And so what they'll do is they'll come back up to the surface, and they know in a post-historic world, they're not holding a winning hand. That the people who actually endured on the ground, they're the ones that are going to hold the winning hand. Not that they'll probably understand it, because they're going to mostly be young people who, going into it, are going to know everything that they remember about Beyonce and very little about how things in the world really work. And so when the elites come up to the surface, they'll beguile them with trinkets and baubles, seeds and medicine, technology, and so forth. And here, sign on the dotted line. And what people are really going to sign away is going to be their freedom. They're going to sign themselves into slavery. And if that happens, if that is successful, then if you want to know what the world is going to be like after the pole shift and after Nibiru, if the elites are allowed to, if we don't call their bluff, just simply call their bluff. If we don't do that, and we're stupid enough to sell our birthright for a bowl of lentils, what will the world look like? Go rent Hunger Games. That's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be a horrific, class warfare kind of thing with a whole lot of very poor, hungry slaves and elites who are, into their nonsense and maintaining their power. On the other hand, if the people who do survive this, all right, are knowledgeable enough to understand what's really happening, then they are going to know who the elites really are. They're not going to be beguiled. And so that is the real important reason why people need to become aware of Nibiru, what's happening, the kind of things that we're talking about, because if they are aware now, they'll carry this knowledge with them, and when they're on the backside, and keep in mind, it's people in their 20s who are going to be the principal survivors of this, because they're going to have the physical strength and enough life experience to make it. But what they're going to remember of this world is Beyonce and their student loans. They're not going to know anything about what we're talking about in this conversation. But if they do, and there's enough of them that know, and they know that this is what the elites do and how they manipulate people, they're not going to sell their birthright for a bowl of lentils, and we wind up becoming a slave species for, more generations than we care to imagine. And that for me is the real concern, because the elites right now, they are already prepared for what is coming. They have been for some time. They're working on the backside situation. They know that in this reality, they've got a royal flush. They've got the unbeatable hand. in a post-historic world, they're going to start out with nothing. They're not even going to have two of a kind. They're not going to have two twos in their hand. They're not going to have a hand, period. Their poker hand is going to be worthless, and the only thing they can do with it is to bluff. But these are very talented people, and they know how to manipulate and beguile very well. And so if they can get us to sell our birthright for a bowl of lentils, then we will become a slave species. And, so for me, the real imperative here is just not that people survive, but for me, the imperative here is about being in it for the species, because if the meek do not inherit the earth, the psychopaths will. And that's really what's at stake here, fellas.
Meek does not mean weak.
If you go and you research the etymology of the word, and here's a classic case of disinformation. The modern dictionaries all give these very diminutive, dismissive, negative interpretations of meek. If you go to the etymology of the word, you'll find that it first came into existence during the 12th century. And at that time, if you were called meek, it was one heck of a compliment. It meant you were a stout-hearted person, you were a survivor, you were someone that would be a member of a survival community committed to service to others and seeking harmony with the world around you and within yourself. And so when you look at the 12th century original etymology of the term as it was coined, that is the profile of the meek who will inherit the earth, period. They will be they're good people. They're the people you want to have for neighbors. And they're the people that are going to work with you. They're not going to subscribe to the survival of the fittest, dog eat dog. That paradigm is going to go away. And we are going to realize as a result of all of this that we live in a sanctuary of life called earth. And that we have to be the good and kind stewards of this sanctuary, which includes all forms of life, including our own. And this is the lesson if humanity learns this lesson and embraces it, the elites are anachronisms. They're toast. That's it. Game over for them. They're not going to, they're going to be buggy whips in a post-historic world. But if on the other side, everyone's going, oh man, you can tell me what Beyonce's been doing for the last 10 years? Where do I sign? If we're doing that, then that's it. Future generations are screwed.
I got tickets for a Lady Gaga concert. You want to go?
Really,
Your friends would start killing each other to go with. That's really at stake
here. Is that it's we're going to have a flyby. The pole shift. What we're seeing in the data that we're looking at is that. First off, the objects are already visible. We have images. We've posted them. We've had one man in North Carolina who has made legitimate observations of Nibiru, not once but twice. Other people have. It's just that we don't report everything that we get because we set a very high criteria for what we publish. It has to be something. First off, you have to observe it with your own eyes. And when you send us a picture, you're sending us a picture of what you have observed with your own eyes. It has to be a naked eye observation. That's one. Two, it has to have good resolution, no less than 8 megapixels. You're sending us something from an old cell phone camera, forget about it. We're not interested. Likewise, we get pictures from people all the time that are interesting pictures of Nibiru, very interesting pictures. And when we ask them about it, they say, well, a friend of mine took this. What do you think about it? And all we can say back to them is, well, very conclusively, it looks like a picture your friend took. And that's all we can say. We don't use it. We're not going to post it. I'm not going to mention it to anyone. And then the third criteria is, are you going to come forward and put your face on it? And here's where we've had a lot of really terrific images, and I won't use them. Because the people who are saying, well, I took it, but, and I don't want to be mocked. I don't want to be ridiculed. I could lose my job if they see I don't use it. No, thank you very much. I file it away. If you're not going to stand up, put your name and your face on it, give me an interview over the phone that I can record and post in a video, we got nothing to talk about. He's seeing the moon or Venus or something else, and he thinks he's seen or she has seen Nibiru. And so we do our due diligence. We comb through this thing with a fine-tooth comb. And that's what we did with Richard Bolerup's report that we put into our report, Nibiru nearing. If we put it up, because if you put up anything else, all it does is it feeds the disinformation and the lack of integrity in the reporting we see elsewhere.
You have to have the data, and that's something that I appreciate about, or that you've kept my interest, because you've provided better data over the years. And last year, like I said in July, I did the video 2013, 2017. The end of July, you came out with the date for Nibiru, or the approximate date for Nibiru, the time period that we could look forward to, somewhere right about the beginning of 2016, first, second quarter.
Yeah, 2016, I think sometime in 2016 it's going to be visible from most every point, if not every point on the globe. The pole shift is going to happen after that. When? It is impossible to say, because these objects really defy what we have defined as celestial laws. You have, it's coming in, and it depends where this mini constellation is. The speed of this mini constellation is going to vary as depending where it is in its orbit. And there are so many variables. And I point this out in the video. There's just so many variables. But earlier we were talking about, Michael was talking about that thing he saw from NASA. Well, in my video, Pole Shift, what I show is there is a NASA astronomer by the name of Anderson who's currently on payroll or is close to retiring, and in not one but two interviews with the media, with prestigious newspapers, he acknowledged the existence of Nemesis, a dark star, and or a brown dwarf in this case, and the existence of Nibiru. So we have, and once we did that, NASA went to war on me. And that's the reason why if you go to Amazon, you'll see all my books are perpetually, temporarily out of stock. And they're using that to muffle and silence our work so that people don't want to see it. Again, remember, think about this from the standpoint of the elites. You want to come up after the disaster with your baubles and bangles and your beads, and you want to get the natives to sign away their freedom and to willingly accept slavery. Well, you can't set aside enough baubles and beads to entice 7 billion people. But 500 million people is workable. Okay?
According to the government's own statistics, shut off the electricity for 2 years and you'll reduce the population in the United States by 90%.
That's right. What they want, look, the reason why there's so much suppression, the reason why there's so much manipulation and social programming is that there's a simple goal: to ensure the maximum possible dieback. That's it. The more people that die, the better the elites like it. They don't care if 1 in 12 of us walks out of this thing and the rest of us die along the way, because what do we all know about human beings? We breed like rabbits. Okay? I mean, for God's sakes, we went from 2 billion to over 7 billion just in less than a century.
If we live forever, we could populate our own planet.
I mean, we're prolific, we are prolific. So, the thing is, it's not about the numbers. They don't, they view us no more passionately than we do farm-raised trout.
Yeah, that's why there's the term Goyim cattle. That, sometimes hey, typically you chip a cattle, and the RFID chip that they're talking about putting into people under the Obamacare Act that's supposed to be carried out by 2017, I say let them try. It'll be interesting to see what happens after the passing of Nibiru.
Let me tell you about this, Peter, okay? Because you're a man, you value your relationship with Creator.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, the chips, they're going to say the chips are for identification purposes.
Yep.
And they're not going to start chipping people now while, we're watching Dancing with the Stars and Walmart is stocked to the shelves. Okay? They're going to start chipping people when life's hard, when you can't get medicine or food. And then you're going to that's when you go to Walmart and they're going to say, run your chip through the scanner. Oh, you don't have a chip? Sorry. We have to just put your stuff back on the shelf.
Yeah, that's when you're going to get your government cheese and your chips. And the
That's
chips
right.
are going to be
Now,
Doritos.
the chips, okay, actually have three functions. You know, I learned about all three of them from a whistleblower. And after she told me this, they found her and they muffled her. But what she told me, because it was really breaking her heart, is that these chips are going to be identifiers, but they're bidirectional, okay? They go both ways. They send information, receive information. So they're sending information about you. They're transmitting your identity and background information. But then they're receiving other information, which is going to be cloud computing style of programming, where when you're chipped, what you don't realize is that your chip is now turning you into a radio receiver for social programming. And they're not going to have to even bother with getting, you know, armies of people to manipulate us on YouTube discussion channels in the place. They'll just pump it directly into your brain. But here's the third thing that the chips are going to do, is that the chips are going to be able to set up barrier frequencies. They have identified the frequencies by which we communicate with God, like the way God touches us in our lives and gives us dreams, visions, and premonitions. They will turn that off. So once you've been chipped, you're going to be socially programmed to be more passive, more adaptive, and your connection to God is going to be completely severed. Now, they're doing that because in an elitist view of the world, you only have value as long as you're doing something that's going to profit them, and B, that you are reliably docile and subservient. So if you're an independent kind of a person, you're not going to be reliably docile and subservient. And so people could be living along, once they're chipped, they're living along coastlines. And what are they going to broadcast into these people? Oh, just stay where you are. It's wonderful. Stay where you are. It's wonderful. Stay where you are. It's wonderful. And then that's it.
Shelter in place.
Shelter in place. And then they die. So there are the evil things that I see that are going to start unfolding. And they're going to start unfolding and bringing these things out when people are panicked and hungry and can't get medicine. And at that point, they're going to be completely unprepared for what's coming, and they're going to have to take what's offered. And what's offered is going to be starve to death or have your heart attack, or you get a chip. And once you're chipped, you're chipped. There's three kinds of chips that they're going to use. There's going to be the subdermal implants, about the size of a large grain of rice. If you are forced to be chipped, that's the one that you want to take. The other one is going to be a thermal transfer. It'll be like a tattoo. They'll put it on your forehead, and then there'll be a circuit that will just etch itself into your skin like an invisible tattoo. And the only way you can remove that is just remove the skin from your head. And then the third kind are going to be infant implants, and at the top of the skull there's a couple of very soft areas where the child at birth has very soft tissue in the skull in order to come through the birth canal. And when a child is born, they'll immediately insert a specialized chip into that area, at which point it's impossible to extract the chip, and that child is chipped for life. And that's where they really want to go. They're going to want to chip all of the newborns that way. So this is what's coming down the pike, and these are the things that they just don't want people to know. All right, and if people do know, then the whole situation takes on a completely different spin. But again, the problem is, all right, you have this knee-jerk denial reaction, which is exactly what. I mean, I am not a Bible person, but I do read the Christian eschatology, and it's like, the more I study it, the more it's like it's a preparatory for these times. And the more I look at it, the more, excuse me if it offends anybody, but I don't think many Christians really understand their own Bible. I don't think they understand the eschatology that well. Because all they depend on is someone who's explaining it to them, and the explanations that they're getting are designed in many cases to be misinforming or incomplete.
It's the church dogma that they're actually getting. They're not getting the actual teachings that are written in the Bible. That's one great advantage that I have. I never learned the church dogma. No
Yeah.
religious dogma was taught to me. It was taught to me in a manner of exopolitics, where other dimensional beings were involved.
Yeah.
Seraphs, other angels, archangels, God. And you know, I was taught by people who had a special calling. Let's leave it at that for this show. And they didn't give me any other special instructions except learn this. Learn this. Well, I'm sorry. Don't get involved in earth politics. Don't get involved in earth religion. And the last thing that I was told was that my future was in the stars, which I finally came to understand when I wrote Letters to Earth.
Are good people. And the majority of the people would look at that young 15-year-old girl and see a human being with a lot of potential. But it's the ones that are malevolent and self-serving, and they are in the minority. They're the ones that have the megaphones. And so the louder the message is, the more evil the person behind the megaphone is.
I believe it was George Green who did a video on Project Camelot and said his awakening moment was when his daughter, they were in Aspen, Colorado, and he was with Ted Kennedy. And his daughter, who was 14 at the time, came walking through the door, and Kennedy said, "I'd like to have that." And George looked at him and said, "No, you wouldn't." He said, "That's my daughter." And Kennedy said, "So?" Yeah. Now I'm quoting this the best I can. You can go look it up. Go find.
No, I remember that interview.
Yeah.
Oh, you get it? They're salivating right now with all these Mexican kids being pushed across the border. They got a lot of agenda there, but this is like a piñata for pedophiles now.
But now, I want to point something out. 80% of the Earth's population live within 90 miles of the coast. Think of the logistics problem it would be to move those people to a safe location inland. 80%. Now think about places like Bangladesh, which is, I can't imagine how many million people you have living at basically coast levels. But there's so many. If you look at the Southeast Asia and the Fiji Islands, Micronesia, you start sloshing the oceans around, these places are going to vanish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The average height of Fiji is 7 feet above sea level.
Yeah. They're toast.
Yeah.
And they want these, the thing is, the elites simply want to reduce the global population to more manageable numbers. And so they'll use any combination of things. Wars, disease, plague, it doesn't matter. Once the party starts, they're going to want people to die, and they're going to want them to die in vast numbers. And the ones that are going to be the fastest to go are the ones living along the coastlines. Now, that's the reason why I moved to Reno. All right? I relocated because I knew it was just time to bust a move.
You think we're going to have some record-breaking hurricanes this season?
There's so much weather manipulation, it's hard to say. I mean, we very well could. I mean, what I see happening here on the West Coast is California has already been written off. You have Nancy Pelosi, who's gone to Congress to ask Congress to set aside special funding for disaster fund for California because they are already looking at this drought and forest fires and rising sea levels. And the reason why is the jet stream has been moved with all the chemtrail spraying. I find it just boggles my mind there are people that still deny chemtrail spraying. I mean, I look over I can see squadrons of these jets laying checkerboard patterns in the sky.
Oh, it's sick.
Marshall, I was one of those people who denied chemtrails. I was like, come on.
I remember that.
Chemtrails, really looking at vapor trails. And then I said, okay, well, let's go look at what they're putting in jet fuel. So I looked up the formula for jet fuel. And I'm reading barium. Why are they putting barium in jet fuel? That made absolutely no sense. And so now I have to start questioning, okay, if they're putting barium in jet fuel, what else is actually going on? And I started investigating it, and I started looking up in the sky, and I started saying, okay, vapor trails vanish. Those things are getting bigger.
Well, first off,
I couldn't be in
you
denial.
See these things, they lay a pattern in the sky, and these things are just persistent for hours, okay? They're not like contrails. Contrails evaporate. These things are persistent. They stay in the sky for hours. And what they're doing is that they're shifting the jet stream, all right? And because they want to get moisture, they want to get more moisture into the Midwest, because this is where Monsanto and all these guys have got all their big bucks invested. In these, in soy, wheat, corn, they want the water for this area. Now, the result is the jet stream. Remember, there was a famous quote from Samuel Clemens: "The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco." Well, the reason for that was it used to be that the jet stream came down from the Arctic, and it used to go in exactly where the Golden Gate Bridge is. All right, that was jet stream came into that point and cut across, and that was the reason why the summers in San Francisco were always so cold, because you'd have the ice melt, and then you would have all of this cold air come rushing down in, and boom. Well, the jet stream has been hijacked so that instead of it coming down into San Francisco, it actually comes down and goes over the top of British Columbia and then down, so that the jet stream has literally been deformed so that it brings the moisture down into the Midwest. That's the reason why the Midwest is having these colder winters, a lot more rain, a lot more bizarre weather. They have more cold, more wet, that kind of stuff. Now, I've had people call me from British Columbia to tell me last winter, they normally in British Columbia in the winter will have 4 to 6 feet of snow. Last winter, they had no snow. None. Just occasional rains. And as a result of that, shallow wells in British Columbia were going dry, and the salmon runs were down 75%. All right? Completely devastating local economies up there. Do we hear about that on CNN or MSNBC or Fox? No. We know what Beyonce's scratching her tuchus to do today. All right? That's it. And so we don't, all of this is going on because they're moving it. Now, January 1st, I was walking through the surf in Santa Cruz when I decided to bust a move, because I lived there for 18 years. January in Santa Cruz was always leather jacket, wool scarf, leather gloves, a wool cap, an umbrella, okay? You always were dealing with cold and with wet. And there I am, tank top, shorts, and I'm walking knee-deep through the surf on January the 1st, like I would in August, okay? Now, it was nice to walk, but it was also, hello, what's wrong with this picture? So I moved to Reno in mid-February. Now, Reno in mid-February got snow. I came up, when I moved up here, it was shirt-sleeve weather, beautiful weather. Matter of fact, know people up here in Truckee, Donner Pass area, and like British Columbia, they would have several feet of snow. You drive down the roads and you see the snow stakes that are set for 3 feet and 6 feet with the reflectors. No snow this winter. None.
Donner Pass doesn't have a very good reputation for being nice weather.
Yeah, remember Donner Pass Party of 50, Donner Pass Party of 49, Donner Pass Party of 48. That was where all those people died, and, cannibalism was happening up there. That's a real cold place. And when you get up there, I mean, even in, there's some snow on the ground, but not too much. And this is, the weather modification that's going on is extremely profound. In California, I was talking with a man who worked with the Forest Service down there. His job was when they come across trees that need to be cut down to make a fire break, and it's a real gnarly tree that just, the regular guys look at it and go, man, I'm afraid it's going to fall on me. I'm not going to do it. They bring him in. He's the troubleshooter. He's been doing it for 30 years. This guy's a maestro with a chainsaw. And he said, what we're seeing now that really is freaking us out is the redwoods have gotten so dry, they're burning. People get redwood for their decking and for their trims on their house because this stuff is not only bug resistant, it doesn't burn. All right. Redwood trees, you see redwood trees that have been in a fire, it's the bark, it's the outer rings of the tree. The inner rings of the tree are there. And matter of fact, the fire is what the redwoods depend on to initiate their procreation cycle. So there's all of these signs. But if everyone's busy going to Walmart and watching Dancing with the Stars and they're oblivious to what's happening in the world around them, they're indifferent. They don't care. I'll worry, it's like Scarlett O'Hara. I'll worry about that tomorrow.
Yeah. And I was just saying in the chat room, I says, I'm willing to bet because of Fukushima and then what BP did. I mean, you put those two together, I think that there's probably a shortage of life within the ocean. And I'm betting that there's going to be a lot more shark attacks. Well,
first off, I think that what we're going to see within a few years is the complete death and annihilation of the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, I agree. In the meantime, though, I think the sharks are going to be
hungry. It is... Fukushima is a disaster that is out of control. There's a guy who got a YouTube channel, and I follow him, and is called Nibiru Magic 2012. And this guy is just an old hippie kind of looking fella, and he reads news headlines on what's really happening there, and he's quoting reliable sources. And the point here is, it's a disaster. The coriums melted through the reactors 1, 2, and 3. The coriums are in the ground. It's China syndrome. And there's an underground river, and they tried to dam up the underground river, and the dam failed. And so it is a catastrophe that is out of control. It is just going to keep pumping radiation into the Pacific. And this is, they give us these, well, there's more radiation in a banana, you get more radiation if you French kiss a cell phone charger and so forth. This is all, it's really sick. When you see scientists talking like propagandists, it's like, hello, the Nazis are back, alive and well. These guys are right out of the Joseph Goebbels playbook.
Radiation is good for you.
Yeah, radiation is good for you, and there's more radiation in a banana,
Isn't that what the bimbo said?
There's, they're already seeing deformities, early deaths, all kinds of problems in fisheries on the West Coast. This is already happening, and the thing about this radiation that's coming out of Fukushima, this is going to keep pumping for hundreds of years, and it is not something that. They've given people this idiotic thought that, well, it's like waste. It eventually evaporates and it'll go away. It'll go away. Nature will clean it up.
In about 40,000 years.
In about 40,000 years, this stuff is additive. It keeps adding to. Not only does it keep adding to itself, but in the process of accumulating, new forms of it evolve, and it becomes even more toxic. And so what we're going to see is we're going to see the death of the Pacific Ocean. There's no question in my mind. Fukushima is going to, and it'll eventually have impacts for the other bodies of water. It'll be primarily, contained in the northern hemisphere, because this is the way the currents carry things. But what's going to happen when all of a sudden cities along the west coast start putting up radiation warning signs? Don't swim.
Yeah, well, that's if they ever do.
I was going to say, if they do.
One of the things, we're facing this, and here, this comes into what we would biblically call the Armageddon event. However, a lot of people never make it past this point. It's like, oh, it's the end of the world, why bother? No, wait a minute. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world system. And
that's right. It's the end of the world as we know it. And frankly, that's not going to be a bad thing. Humanity really needs to learn that God has given us a sanctuary of life called planet Earth, and we need to be good and noble stewards.
Now, exactly. Now, if you look at the prophecies on how they're actually set up during these times, it's after the Nibiru event that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords returns with the armies of the multiverse. Okay, I gotta imagine that since this is the Loyalist force, they outnumber the rebels 2-1, that they're also probably going to bring advanced technology with them to maybe neutralize the radiation and a lot of the pollution on this planet. It's all possible just by changing the vibration of the actual string within the atomic structure itself. So change the vibration of the string, according to string theory, it's there, and you'll change the vibration of that structure, making it inert. So the technology might be on its way. And this is where...
From your lips to God's ears, Peter.
Yeah, so, it's not necessarily all doom and gloom. And when you look at I read earlier about where it says in Revelation chapter 6, but you go to Revelation chapter 19 where it talks about the return of the King of Kings. Even in the 17th verse it says that there's an angel that stands that's in mid-heaven, and he calls all the birds together for the evening feast of God. And the same ones, the kings, the rulers, the rich people, and all their support staff, they become bird food. So
Works for me, baby. That works for me.
And the great thing is, we are building flocks of meat-eating seagulls with our garbage dumps.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about Alfred Hitchcock and the movie The Birds.
Oh, the birds, yeah. Well, that takes me back.
Yeah, so, think about 80% of the world's population not being told what in the world is going on. It's finally last minute. Okay, folks, you got to get off the coast because Nibiru's here, and you're going to get washed off if you don't get off. And so you got these people in a mad rush, all trying to get off the coast, killing each other to get out of the way. And meanwhile,
they're not going to let them do it. That's when, I've had this actually.
They'll get as far as the Delaware River.
This is a real, the funny thing is when I moved into Reno, and I tell people, if you relocate to an area, you want to go to some place where you feel like it's home. And when I came to Reno, I fell in love with it because it's 40% original Reno and 60% people who come from California. And the folks that are native to Reno are the very same kind of people I grew up in Phoenix in the 1960s with. And they're wonderful, easygoing, cordial people, tough as nails. I really like them. And the folks from California that are here are the folks that I always wanted to meet in California and couldn't find. I mean, Reno got the cream of the crop. And, so there's a diverse culture here. I love it. It's wonderful. And, the conversation I have, there's so many folks here that are into this topic.
Guys, we're just about out of time. So, Marshall, I hate to rush you like this, but we're down to just a minute and a half. So please go ahead and get out anything that you'd like. And I thank you so much for coming back. The time just flies.
Really does. Yes, for those of you who are new to the topic, please check out my new video series, Planet X 101. You can see it at planetx101.com. That's planetx101.com. Also, read our latest article. It's Time to Look Up at YOWUSA.com. YOWUSA.com. And the thing here, and I want you to remember, is we can't beat the elites. The future is for the meek. But not by default. We have to claim it. And all we have to do to claim it is to call the bluff.
I love that, Marshall, because you look at the scripture in Matthew 24, and Jesus said that those times would be so difficult that if it wasn't for the chosen ones, no one would be left.
Well, I'm substituting the beer for coffee for right now.
Oh boy, been a long day, huh?
Yeah. Not really. I'm actually in a good mood. The trolls cheer me up. When they attack, I love it. It just makes me feel good. But Marshall, welcome back, and I know you've got some information you want to share, and we're looking forward to learning. So by all means.
All right. Well, there is a lot to do since the last time we talked. We've released 3 videos in our Planet X 101 series, and you can see that at yowza.com, YOWUSA.com. And we have the ones we've brought up are Deep Impact, Nibiru Nearing, and Pole Shift. And just real briefly, Deep Impact, we were doing the AMS meteor data, and the trends there are not looking good. If the trends continue, we could very well have a deep impact event that would swamp a coastline. If the trends do not reverse quickly. Nibiru nearing is the one that seems to really have hit a nerve with the elites. Excuse me. We have several observations, including several from Turrialba, that webcam we've been tracking in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And in response to our program, which went up on June 8th, the U.S. government had the camera tilted down into the dirt, so it's no longer usable. So what they've done is they've stopped the making that webcam or that surveillance camera available for viewing. And if you go to my webpage at yowusa.com, you can see the Planet X 101 series, all 4 programs. It's about 3 hours. And for those of you who are newbies, it distills what would be the equivalent of 3 years of personal research effort into 3 hours. So this is a really fast and friendly way to bootstrap yourself into the topic. But also when you're there, read our article, It's Time to Look Up. And in that article, I document blow by blow. But this is smoking gun proof of suppression on the topic.
Yeah, and Marshall, if you remember correctly, after the last time you were on, I had to email you to let you know that, not that I'm anybody special or important, but I, double check stuff. I took like timestamps from your video and I went and looked, and I could account for everything except for that object. And so,
yeah, that is, and then I get people saying, well, it's a reflection on this and it's a reflection on that. Well, in previous videos, we have shown the object slipping behind the cloud banks. So tell me if a reflection can do that. I don't think so.
Yeah. Peter?
So.
I'm here. Sorry, I was just listening.
Oh,
I had watched the videos earlier, and Marshall, I have to say, I've been interviewing you personally for about 3 years, and I've noticed over that period of time, at least 3 years, and over that period of time, you've continued to refine your work and provide more accurate data. And now, I'm thinking, okay, sooner or later, this is going to have to show up. I was not a big, and I'm still not quite a big fan of Nibiru, but for different reasons now. But I wasn't, based on Zechariah Stitchin's work, I was not a big fan of Nibiru. I said, hey, we're crossing the galactic plane, and I can see Earth evidence of this. However, we watched Elenin come in and go out, and that wasn't Nibiru. And we watched Ison come in and go out, and that was supposed to be everything from the motherships to Nibiru. And no, it's not time yet. And I knew these things based on the prophecies, based on the timing that's laid out in the prophecies. However, when I'm listening to this data here that you're presenting, and I'm looking at the timeline of my data in the prophecies, I'm saying, uh-oh, heads up.
Yeah, that is, whichever way you cut it, we're in deep poodoo. We are.
Yeah, and it's the timing of the events, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but it's the timing of the events with the blood tetrad moons that started in April on Passover, and they're going to end on the Festival of Booths, which is September 28th, 2015. Interestingly enough, the next Passover has been miscalculated. It's on the calendar as April 22nd, when indeed, when you do the calculations as prescribed, it should be March 23rd. Interesting. It may come at a time when you think not.
Yeah.
Well, so, I don't think you'll
I'm
mistake
looking at these things and what you're saying, and I'm saying, okay, well, maybe we should pay attention to what Marshall has to say.
Yeah, I find the denial factor is just amazing to me. If you create a Google search string, end times, Bible, and deception, okay? You plug that, end times plus Bible plus deception. You put that into Google, and it comes up with like 1.63 million results. So people are used to talking about, well, yeah, there's going to be deception. 1.63 million results. I mean, stop and think about it. These are web pages that are hitting on these keywords in that sequence. And yet people still say, Well, if it was that big, the government would have to tell us about it because it would be that big.
Yeah, and if you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn that's for sale. It's going cheap. It's going quick. To you, whoever wants to buy it, $300 million. You can put
There
a
you
toll
go.
booth on it, and we're good to go. You can make your
Such a
money
deal.
back in a year. I promise you. There's a lot of traffic that goes across that bridge.
And it's what I'm seeing is is just part and part of the suppression. What makes the suppression really so effective is that people really do tend to cling to the bliss of their ignorance, like jealous lovers. They do not want to. They don't want the news, but there's a growing minority of them that do, and that are waking up to it. And so that for me was the key issue here to creating the Planet X 101 series, which is about 3 hours of video and capped off with Pole Shift, which gets into a look at, what would the celestial mechanics be in terms of the causality of a pole shift. And, after you've watched this for 3 hours, you're going to see a lot of hard evidence. You're going to see a lot of observations. You're going to see a lot of science. You're also going to see other things. You're going to see prophecy, predictions. It pulls all of the interest angles in there. But at the end of it, if you've gone through the whole 4 episodes in the series, which takes about 3 hours, you'll have consolidated 3 years of personal research. And at that point, you're going to have a really strong mastery of the topic. And the reason why I'm doing that for the newbies is I really want them to jumpstart and to be able to get into it, because they do not have the benefit of time that people have had in the past to contemplate all of this. They really need to get rocking and rolling much faster. And so for that reason, I've got myself working on a dual track where I need to work with the newbies, which is why I do this series, but my greater emphasis right now is to begin helping people who are going to who've already committed to surviving this.
Let me ask
And to
you.
get into it.
I'm sorry, Marshall. No, you could finish up.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you. I'd like for you to one more time go over why it's not a lens flare. And I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying for those who keep trying to, point out and say, oh, it's a lens flare. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, because lens flare, sundog, these have become knee-jerk denial rejections.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the video really, and look at the pictures or the evidence that Marshall presents, or the videos actually.
Right.
A picture's worth 1,000 words. Yeah.
It is, and the thing of it that I find a little frustrating is people who say this, or people who, I say, well, have you followed my work? Have you watched my videos? Have you seen everything we presented? And it's no, but it's a sundog. But you haven't looked at my work. No, it's a sundog, and you're not going to look at my work. No, I'm not going to waste my time looking at your work. And I mean, it's this. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But when we started looking at this, of course that's going to happen. Now, I've been in this game since 1999. That's when I wrote my first articles in this field. And it was in about 2003 that I started seeing a real heavy disinformation effort by the operatives being planted with these sundog cell phone pictures. And this was in the days when you had the early camera phones that had, like 1 to 2 megapixel cameras. 2 megapixels was woo. And these cameras had really primitive circuitry compared to what we have now. And so all they had to do was just take it, name it at the sun, and shake it back and forth. And they could get it to do all kinds of stupid things and create halos and reflections and sundogs.
And Marshall, I just want to say one thing here. What you're pointing out here is extremely important. At one time, I had my own photography business, and I used Hasselblad and Rolleiflex. There was a reason. There's a reason why I used those cameras.
Rolleiflex. Good Lord, man, you had the good stuff.
Yeah, and for the if I really wanted to expand the film, I had a Mamiya RB67, and that's it. I'm dealing with a piece of film which is 3 inches by almost 4 inches, and I would use ultrafine grain so I could turn around and take that picture and blow it up to a 3x4 photograph, 3 foot by 4 foot photograph, and it would
Right.
look crisp and clear. So having and with the circuitry, when I love digital cameras. Big frustration with digital cameras now that they're getting up into the 40 megapixel range. Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, but still,
You're
you
dealing
know,
with circuitry and
it's
the
still
camera's
dealing with
brain.
circuitry
Yeah.
and batteries. And I got to be honest with you, when I've gone out on certain shoots, I still have a good old 35 millimeter Olympus, and I'll go buy film and use it because click, you got it, click. And with these digital cameras, it's click. And it just takes forever for them to image. They just don't have the speed unless you're going to go out and buy the really expensive ones. But then you run out of batteries. Then you run out of chips. I mean, the old Olympus, I just get a bag of film and maybe a couple extra batteries, and I'm good to go for a trip. And so it's getting there. But the big thing that we're really finding right now people are using for observations are smartphones. And here's what really made a huge shift in the disinformation effort, because back when the cell phones were 1 to 2 megapixels, you could get all of these aberrations. And so they just started flooding the internet with this nonsense. All right. And we were watching it. We've documented it. You can find it on our site. We were, documenting what was happening years ago. Not that anyone is ever interested in history. And however, things changed in a very pronounced way when Apple brought out the first of the iPhones. I think back then it was about, 8 megapixel was the camera, but it just simply, the iPhone set a whole new standard. And at that point, what we saw was that the disinformationalists stopped the campaign. But they had already achieved their goals. They had gotten the terms reflections and sundogs injected into the public domain. And consequently, when people would look at pictures coming off of smartphones, they would brand them as sundogs just as fast as they would coming off of these junky little phones, which we won't even use images that come in from those phones. They're just very problematic. But the smartphones, now you're talking 10, 12 megapixels and more. I've got a Galaxy S4 Active, and my God, the picture resolution is amazing. And so once those came in, the disinformation campaign chilled out, but the damage was already done. And so people were already inoculated against these kind of images. And the thing is, with a smartphone, you can get reflections and sundogs in an image, but you can also, unlike with the cheap cameras or the older cameras, which were very poor, you can differentiate between a legitimate object and some sort of aberration, reflection, or sundog. And so you can make those distinctions in a better resolution camera. And so, you still have this thing where people jump to it. Now, when we started tracking Turrialba, all right, and this is 3 different camera systems, and one was a standard definition, one was high definition, and the current one, which was gifted by the United States government, is about as clear as mud. And however,